James Southern and his two panelists. I'll let James do the introduction. Guys, just grab your seats as you feel comfortable. There are, I think, microphones up there. And James Southern is the principal at an entity called Front Row Advisory, and those in the know James as sort of a consummate insider in a lot of issues relating to broadcast and/or television challenges. You were, I think, you were a former Comcast guy, right? Freewheel? Yeah, right. With some good knowledge of the overall television landscape from that and other places. We kind of hinted at some of what we're going to discuss here. I'm going to let James introduce his guests, but there's no question that, we talked about sort of the ad transactional processes and that kind of thing, but television and video workflow generally, right? Not just including the advertising thing, but just the general issues of how, shall we say, television-centered companies are or are not evolving to becoming much more, shall we say, full-flavored video companies and/or beyond that too. And you're going to hear a bunch of sort of things embedded in this conversation. Some of them futuristic technologies like ATSC 3.0, but also some of the initiatives within the industry to make processes, plural, better, cheaper, more efficient, etc. That's kind of the theme of this half hour or so, and without any further ado, I'd love to James Southern. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hello all. Today we're going to talk, I think, about 3 different topics, all in the vein of the introduction there. Some business issues around should TV and video be integrated at all? Who's going to push for the integration of TV video? Is it the sell side? Is it the buy side? Why is that going to happen? Then I think we'll talk a little bit about TIP. And the TIP initiative that I'm working on is mainly focused at linear inventory for local broadcasters. But pretty soon we're going to get down to looking at digital and video as well and incorporating that. And then I think to give you the granular flavor, I think we're going to walk through the day in the life of a TV and video campaign and examine where there are big differences and what some of these companies are doing to bring them together. And hopefully at the end there'll be time for a few questions. Okay, so welcome. To start with, the provocative question discussed at lunch is there a compelling business reason to integrate TV with video? I'm talking more about brand advertising today. And bear in mind that my panelists are from local broadcast television, so they may have a slightly different flavor from the national broadcasters. So, Joe?
Sure. Joe Fiveash. I've been most recently at Raycom, and before that the Weather Channel, so I've got mostly on the digital side, but I've gotten a full flavor of how digital and television come together in many different environments, including broadcast TV. So I think probably everybody in the room would say there absolutely is a business imperative to make it happen. It's interesting because in some of the panels earlier, people talked about how incremental and slow the progress has been, and that's absolutely true. There's no question that people have been saying the sky is falling for years, and yet somehow the sky hasn't completely fallen yet. And the only thing I would say is that if you look at how things change, typically they don't change incrementally. They change. Everything changes a little bit, or not at all, and then all of a sudden it happens like a load of bricks. And there are these tipping points that happen when the people that haven't prepared for the future all of a sudden get exposed. And before that, it didn't really matter who did and who didn't. But if you look at the amount of OTT inventory that will probably be on the market in the next year or two from some of these really large OTT initiatives, that could really likely be a tipping point where there's all of a sudden enough inventory that is a combination of sight, sound, and motion and targetability, so that everything that doesn't have that could be dramatically less attractive all of a sudden. So just another perspective on yes, it's important, but it could be more important than we think, because the people that haven't been doing the things to change could be 2 or 3 years behind all of a sudden when it really matters. And it hasn't really mattered in a lot of ways all that much yet, but it seems like it will.
Yes.
So I'm Lustgarten from Hearst Television. I oversee technology there. I can start off with a little story that about more years than I want to remember, I started some of our web and mobile businesses, and we had a little mobile business, and my first year aspiration was to get 1 million page views, and I thought it was really aspirational. In 2018, we had 2 billion page views. So if you look to the business and look at the areas of the business that are growing, our digital business, our video business that we're syndicating out is growing at a phenomenal rate. So the need for us to invest in that business and merge that business in with our traditional linear business is a very strong imperative for us. And figuring out how to do that is an emerging business model. Our sellers love the fact that they have more platforms to sell, more opportunities for us to extend the revenue, and the point of inflection that we're at now is how they can convince our, particularly our local customers, that that's a good value proposition for them to pursue.
So where do you think the push to integrate video with television is going to come from? What's going to push it over the edge? Is it the agency side, as Joe is saying, or the sellers are looking to integrate it to create new products? Are the vendors going to build out, the system vendors that we all use are going to build out a cross-platform product, and it's just going to be available, and then that's going to drive adoption? So what are your thoughts?
Well, I hate this answer, but it does have to be everybody. I mean, if you look at the different parts of the ecosystem, there's no one part that's strong enough to push change all the way through, even if it really believes in it. So, you know, it's really hard for sellers to just change the way they sell. And that is a barrier and an opportunity. And I think at least in the local space, you know, the local broadcast sold locally space, it's really very important for the sellers to change the value proposition that they're putting out there, so that it keeps up with what's available from other people that hasn't been available at scale, but could be available at scale very soon. So I think a piece of it is the actual sales organization and the people that build the products that the sales organizations sell. I think another really important part of it is the vendors, because most media companies are set up to make incremental progress. And I wish that weren't the case, and people try really hard, and many succeed in some ways, but by and large, really big companies that are based on hitting their numbers and growing, 5 or 10% a year, and if you do that, then you're a hero. A lot of the vendors in this space are funded differently, and they have a different role, and their investors and management are organized around the 50-yard down the field pass rather than 3 yards in a cloud of dust. And I think some of those people are represented in this room, and that's incredibly valuable for the large media companies who can offload some of that risk to people who are better at it and actually designed to take those kinds of risks. So I think that's an important part of the sharing of responsibility for making progress.
Yeah, I'll start from putting my technologist hat on. To Joe's point, these vendors that support us and provide the transactional systems have a long roadmap and a long development timetable. So if I put my technologist hat on, if we're not talking to them now about where we need to get to, who knows how long this will get pushed out. To come back to your question, the need is absolutely going to be there. I'm a technologist, I can't tell you how our sellers are going to package this, but I think the demand is going to come from the buy side. There's going to be a need for us to sell on a converged basis. My focus right now is how do we get our vendors prepared for it, how do we start to educate our sellers to understand the value proposition, how do they price and package it, and how do they go out into the community to try to convince people that this is an attractive opportunity for them to pursue.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, just personally, the feedback I've got from a lot of agencies has been that they are looking at aggregating or consolidating the TV and video buying departments because around the idea of brand advertising, brand video. And I think at the national level, you're beginning to see that impact for the sellers, not so at the local level yet, but eventually it's going to be like a wave that sweeps across the industry. Might take a couple of years, but I definitely see that change happening at the national level.
I think part of that's because our sellers do not know how to package it, and I think that the demand and educating our customers on the local side is not yet starting to emerge. But I think we're starting to see little evidence that they're starting to have an interest in that.
Yep. Great. So maybe let's switch gears now and talk a little bit about the TIP initiative. So the TIP initiative was founded about a year, 18 months ago, and a number of local broadcasters were kind of frustrated with the level of innovation and the difficulty in the buy-sell process that they'd heard both internally and with the agencies, their agency partners. And so the TIP initiative was kind of formed to make buying local television easier. And there was clearly an outflow of dollars has occurred over the last 3 years, maybe to national cable, caused by, firstly, national cable being super cheap, but secondly, the buying process of local broadcasters is a heavy lift, a lot of people involved and a lot of manual labor involved. So both of your companies are part of the TIP initiative, so thanks. And we're growing all the time and building momentum across the vendor community. And so what we're looking to do is come out with a set of designs, interfaces for transacting local media, particularly television at the moment. And those interfaces touch from the initial rate card being shared with the agency, right through to the invoice being sent to the agency. And we're looking at upgrading all those interfaces that exist today, those emails that exist today, those PDF files, and turning them into automated APIs. So interfaces that can act in real time, can communicate, can keep both sides in sync. And so I guess how TIP initiative relates to this conversation is, so we focused on the television side of the transaction equation, but because video is becoming that much more important, and the local broadcasters have over-the-top inventory, mobile video inventory, this year we're going to start looking at building the hooks into the TIP framework, the interface designs, to begin to incorporate digital as well. And so let's talk a little bit about the problems that might occur in that process, because it's kind of like two different universes today, and they need to be shoehorned into the same process. So how is that going to happen? So just your top level thoughts.
One top level thought, and we'll get more granular as we go with all this, but it's obviously really complicated and hard. So how do you accomplish complicated and hard things that involve a bunch of different companies with a lot of different interests and objectives? And I think the TIP initiative as a process is a really good blueprint for how you do that. You don't try to come up with a specific technology. It's all standards-based, so that you can create a playing field for people to cooperate for their own self-interest in order to change. And I think that TIP blueprint of, look, we're not going to dictate technology or business objective or any of that. We're just going to give people a platform to communicate on, so that they can build on it and each do what they do best and provide choice to the people that do choice, and a platform for the vendors who are trying to build their businesses. That's the way that you accomplish really hard, complicated things like what you're talking about. So I think that's a great start.
I think it's a question that's difficult to answer right now, but because we don't know how this is all going to go. But I think that the underlying concept of the TIP was to build that framework, but also encourage our vendor community to lean in open their platforms. And we've seen evidence of that throughout the industry with the major partners. And I think that the notion that we would continue to pursue ensuring that the vendor community is embracing the notion of building open platforms will give us the flexibility then to extend whatever work we're doing on the linear side and the digital side, and hopefully bring these opportunities to transact business efficiently as we get to the future. I think, yeah, the notion that we're moving to an impression-based currency and unifying that currency, or maybe the currency won't unify short term. We need better tools and better technology and better analytics to weave through all these, and the notion that we will freely be able to exchange information between the vendor community and trading partners with a standard rule set like the TIP initiative would offer would certainly be, something that we could all get behind and endorse.
Yes, and thanks to the vendors in the room that are supporting it. When we look at the campaign lifecycle from start to finish, where do you think the key challenges or roadblocks are to integrating television and video? Is that kind of like an audience problem, an impression-based problem right at the start? Or is it a system problem? Is it a negotiation problem?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of all those things, and I think we just have to pursue this problem by problem. Yet we are transacting converged business today. It's kludgy and it's cumbersome to do, but if our customer wants it, we're going to figure out a way to do this. So taking data from disparate systems, merging that data in an effective way so that we can package up a converged opportunity is something that we're doing. Is it easy? No. Is it complex? Yes. Are there multiple systems involved? Yes. Can we send a converged invoice today? We can. But I think we see evidence that there's opportunities now to progress our efforts in that regard, make it easier to start transacting business like that. And I think we're going to continue to aggressively pursue opportunities to do that. I think the notion that we would get to a converged platform, be able to package an order, whether it be impression-based or a combination of audience and impression-based, and then the ability to serve our customers with a single invoice that would span both parts of the transaction, I think, are essential imperatives for us to pursue.
I agree with all that. The only thought I have is that when you look at the tech stack, to me the planning piece is the most important piece for this convergence. That kind of leads the way. And because then you can actually plan a campaign across platform that will provide the kinds of metrics that advertisers, some of them already want these converged metrics. Some of them don't even know that it's a possibility. So now you're showing these advertisers that you can get something that maybe you never knew that you could get. So, and then downstream from that, you have all the billing and reconciliation and all the rest of it. But I think several people spoke about the converged planning modules that are either almost out there or just out there or coming, and I think that's really, really important.
To start. And presumably, it doesn't just satisfy the buyer's need for convergence, but also allows you to optimize your inventory mix.
Very good point. I mean, we were talking earlier. What are the things that are causing people to not move fast? Like, what are the barriers? What are the deep, fears that are out there that are keeping people from moving fast, other than the normal, barriers to getting things done in big companies? And one of them, I think, is this fear that there'll be a lot of stranded inventory, that we'll use the best inventory and get paid 50% more for it, but then we strand 50% of our inventory and get paid 90% less for that. And that's no good. So I think you're right, that the planning software can address that. I think it's going to be a challenge no matter what, but that's the start. And it's a math problem that can be figured out. And it needs to be figured out, because I think that's the barrier that gets talked about a lot behind closed doors, that makes sales organizations really not eager to have this happen.
And I think that goes back to the other point about our sellers. You talk to them, and there's an enthusiasm about having more products to sell. They want to make money, so they're excited that there's new vehicles for them to do it, but they don't reflect on what it's causing in terms of their need to have a planning tool, have a way to do the transaction seamlessly. And I think that's part of the process of us working with them to educate them on what this opportunity is. We just launched a new OTT platform at Hearst. AnyStream, was educating our people now that, oh look, there's a new OTT opportunity for you to go out and sell. Here's the value proposition of this, and we've had great success with doing that. But then it's a siloed extension of our existing product. It isn't really getting to a converged opportunity to package an OTT buy with a linear buy-in.
Joe, you mentioned earlier developing different creative, different subject matter for audiences on over the top to expand the interest for buyers to come to the table. So talk a little bit about that.
Sure. A lot of the conversation about all this tends to focus on sort of the media metrics, number of impressions, response to those impressions, dollars, CPM, that kind of thing. But there is a creative side to it. And not just a creative side on the advertising side, but a creative side on the content side. And one of the things that we saw at Raycom as we launched OTT things is that it enabled conversations with advertisers that weren't possible before, because the content actually lent itself to some sort of endemic advertising or some kind of idea, creative idea on the advertising side that was really attractive, and was more attractive than just, here is a way to reach this demographic or this number of people. And so once you start doing the OTT stuff, you're no longer bound by local news from X to Y and all the programming considerations that are extremely well worked out. And the whole science of generating audience for local TV stations is obviously one that's extremely well developed, but it's developed around a fairly static set of content. And having new OTT content to sell, I think, is tremendously energizing to sales groups that haven't had that availability.
And I think the other point that might be relevant to touch on is ATSC 3.0. It's the next evolution of this, and I was just at the Consumer Electronics Show 2 weeks ago, and I saw and had several conversations about this, and up until this point, at least from my perspective, this has been a lot about technology discussion. How are we going to do this? How are we going to protect our content? What digital rights do we have in place to do this? I sat there for the first time and said, okay, now that we're getting closer to that point where we can do this, what does it mean from a business perspective? Is this going to be a digital impression that I'm going to tell our people to go out and try to market, or is this going to be an opportunity for me to do dynamic ad insertions across the linear channel? And the notion, going back to my other point before, is how do we work with our vendor community to start to say, I want to support doing this in either way. Who do we partner with? How do we get information exchange so that we can prepare for the point when ATSC is going to come live, and we can start to have the opportunity to get yet another product and another revenue stream that's new to our business.
Yeah, great. So we've touched on some problems and opportunities. How are the vendors reacting? I mean, are the vendors slow to react? Are they there? Is it the usual vendors that you're working with, or are new vendors coming into the industry to solve the problems?
Well, we've gone to all our vendors, and the message has come from our CEO. You lean in, work with us, prepare for the future, or we're going to look for another vendor to work with. And most of our major vendors have leaned in, embraced the notion that the future is evolving, the need for changes fundamentally, and therefore technology to accommodate these changing business needs is there, and they're working with us. Of course, I think the reception on our side is pretty good. I cannot speak for the buy side technology providers, because I deal mostly with the sell side, but I think from my interaction with it, that even the buy side vendors are at least coming to the table to discuss it. They may not be as quickly responding to some of the requests that are being made of them as sell-side vendors, but I think everybody is used to the table talking about it.
Joe, any thoughts on the vendor community? Is it kind of chicken and egg there?
No, none that are really all that important. I mean, I think everybody is doing everything they can to try to protect their position while at the same time moving the whole industry forward. And to some degree, that's always a little bit of accelerator and brake. But I think the right things are happening, and I think it does have to be driven by people like Adam who say, you got to do this, or things are going to be different. And it's hard when it's easier to create a whole industry like digital was when nobody had anything, and you're just adding on to something that you didn't have last year. In the television world, it's obviously an immense and incredibly valuable industry, and change is going to happen more slowly because there's a lot more to lose. But I think if we do the same things that we've been talking about for the last half hour, we're getting there. Some people are getting there faster than others, and they will be rewarded.
We're certainly an industry that's slow to evolve. Our transactional process on the traditional linear side has been the same for decades. I think there's finally, enough conversation about this to try to move the needle and bring more efficiency to that self-process on the traditional linear side. And the opportunity now to extend that to video-based digital products, I think, is something that I think is going to be important to the industry as our core revenue continues to flatten. Our digital opportunities, and particularly for video syndication, are increasing. And yeah, the dollars may not be significant at this point in time, but they're growing at a very high rate. So the notion that we focus on that and perpetuate that and bring down some of the barriers to doing business with our industry and using our platforms or something, I think that we really need to focus on.
Great. And last question, quick answer. So in this chicken and egg situation with the agencies, the vendors, the broadcasters, trying to figure all this out, looking forward maybe the next year or 18 months, what do you think is going to be maybe some of the coolest development in this space that's really going to drive it forward? Is it going to be audience data, integration, something around linear or video, with PTSC3? What's going to be the hot topic?
I do think a cross-platform planning tool that actually works and can bring to life all the stuff that the companies in this room have to offer to advertisers. It's really an amazing tool set, and yet it's not pulled together on a technology platform that allows you to communicate to an advertiser. And that's a huge opportunity. And I think if there are examples of that in the marketplace in the next 12 months, then that's going to be a game changer.
And I think there was a lot of conversation this morning. Targetability is becoming a big issue. And yeah, we had 2 billion impressions last year, but our ability to really bring meaningful data along with that 2 billion in terms of who we're targeting, who we can deliver, is, I think, really going to be a core objective for us to pursue on the video and digital side of our business. On the linear side, everybody wants to talk about attribution. That's the big buzzword of the year. So certainly you hit on a key point for us to have accountability about how we're selling and what our advertisers are able to reach in terms of the audience and how that audience is reacting is going to be a key opportunity for us in the next year.
Okay. Thank you very much, guys. Maybe open it up. Are there any questions from the floor of topics you've heard today?
Okay, time for one. And I got the box. Go ahead.
Is that the microphone it's holding?
Testing, 1, 2. Hey, it's Tom again. Hello? Well, I can still talk loud. So I was just going to say, it's a great idea to say, okay, as big businesses with established, we have to rely on these venture-funded companies to solve all of our problems for us. But how on earth do you keep these guys honest? When you've got millions and 10 millions of dollars of investment in these guys, they're naturally going to, over-egg what they can do, and they're going to, how can people who are actually looking to put billions of dollars of their business on it trust these guys and tell the difference between the products that are snake oil and the ones that are actually going to make a difference?
Yeah.
You got to be really good at your job. I mean, that's what you're paid to do, and it's very possible, and there are great vendor communities out there, and when you look at the folks that are here from the vendor side, it's not like they schedule 30 minutes and say, hey, you need to buy now. I mean, it's the most consultative sell I've ever seen, and you get so much information during the sales process. And sure, you have to make sure that that you understand it and can validate it. But it's a very well developed and deep and thoughtful vendor community as I've experienced, and I think that's the job that we all have, is to sort through competing points of views and come up with make the bets that you think are the best bets. And some of them are technology bets, some of them are people bets, but that's what we do for a living.
I think there's two points I'd make to answer your question. Number one is, as a C-suite executive, you have to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the vendor community. As Joe said, there's only that many. There's a finite group of vendors that are out there that have the capability, and understanding where they're going, where they're bringing their technology, working with them on their roadmap to ensure that they're going in the right direction. We're working with them all. We may have one vendor, but we have a dialogue with all of them. But number two, going back to the conversation of, this is not going to change overnight. The only power we have, to your question, is the contract we have with these people. And the notion is, you're going to lean in and we're going to do business with you, or not. When that contract's over, we're going to go knock on someone else's door and go in a different direction. And that seems to have taken hold and I think gotten some recognition from the vendor community.
Are we good on time or another question?
I think we're done.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.